Are we going half goods up?
I am, because don't be a follower. Just... Please don't.
Hey kids, welcome to Loosely Defined.
Just take a hard pivot into just some really disturbing content.
Alright, I'm gonna move to that so we don't just stare at ourselves the entire time.
Yeah, honestly, that's
on the computer screen.
Okay, that made it
Yeah.
That immediately changed the vibe. I was just like, all right. Like,
Yeah, like fuck. Oh right, was a. I mean, really, we should just be talking to each other. So
yeah,
it's not.
I agree.
I'm gonna try to arrange my body. So for all our audio listeners, this is a very special episode. I don't know if you would be able to tell just off of our mumbling or hopefully the audio quality is better since we're in the same room.
Yeah.
Welcome to a very special first episode of 2020.
Woot.
And the first live action loosely defined episode.
First live action. The rest of them were what?
Yeah, they were
weird CG like.
I mean, just off of the frame rate of some of those videos, sometimes, yeah. So they were animated,
beautifully stop motion rendered.
Yeah, very intentionally.
Kubo and the Two Strings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, artistic. No, but
yeah, we're also both coming off of sicknesses.
Yeah, so we missed one episode over the holidays, and I was sick. That would have been our Christmas week episode,
and then I took the sickness the next week.
Yeah, that would have been our New Year's Day actual turnover of the year episode. I think it would have actually aired on the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is our official first episode of 2020, and we are going to record 2 today and get them out to you and get ourselves back on track.
Indeed.
So the first of those 2 is what would have come second originally, and this would have been obviously very nice to have had out on the 1st, but it's our big recap episode.
Ba-da-ba-ba. We don't have we didn't think about
no jingle.
Sound effect. Yeah, no mantra, no slogan.
So basically what we did last year is we did the Loosely Defined Awards, which is, our version of the Game Awards or the Oscars, and they're equally as prestigious and coveted.
And right.
And correct, yeah.
It's not necessarily up for,
But on top of just doing the best things of the year, we are going to expand the conversation for the rest of the episode out into the best of the decade. Because the decade ended in 2020, not 21.
Yeah,
for all those people who are not fun at parties.
I'm slowly being swayed to the not fun at parties camp, which
really?
is upsetting. A little bit. It kind of makes sense, but I'm also I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be that guy.
My thing is, it's not even about how you think about it now, right? It's just that when I say think of the 90s, you're going to think from 1990 to 1999. You're not going to count 2000 as the 90s.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. It's just a whole lot of actualing happening for the sake of actualing.
Sure, but all of the actualers have been compelling within my circle.
Compelling?
It's in my circle, yeah.
You just had Shakespearean actors just convincing you through monologue that 20
skeletons and shit.
Yeah.
No,
holding oh, okay, yeah, I got the reference.
Or skull, I meant.
Dr. And that Skull. Was the night skeletons came to life.
Alright, so let's just jump into the 2019 awards.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Alright, so we're kind of just going to go relatively we're going to have our individual and then we'll hopefully come to a consensus on the loosely defined official. And if not, who gives a shit?
Yeah, this is a little more open than we did it last year, and especially just more open than award shows in general. Because we're not really thinking of this as an award show. It's just sort of our recap episode.
Yeah, it's things that we want to mention. Because I personally just like talking about the things that I enjoy. So saying this was my favorite for whatever reason. In any capacity that I can shoehorn it in. I will.
All right, yeah. So let's start with movies of the year. And we normally talk about movies, games, and TV primarily, and that's sort of how we're going to break these up. The awards will be in those kind of various categories, and then we'll, it's like any other episode. We'll just see where the conversation goes.
Yeah. And, if we get sidetracked, then we will get sidetracked, but that's loosely defined for you.
As we're getting sidetracked in this explanation.
Yeah. Okay, so my best movie, I'm torn from the beginning, because it's either, the nostalgia tugging and, I feel almost as though if I don't have it everywhere on this list, this and the decades list, then it's kind of on me. like Endgame. Just, I mean, it's not surprising at all. But then, last night, we saw Parasite, which came out in 2019. I was about to say 2009. So it counts. But, like, holy shit. Like, we were talking about it yesterday, before we saw Parasite, saying, like, Sorry to Bother You in 2018, like, was the most important movie of 2018, I think. But, like, Infinity War also came out, so I'm not going to not, mention Infinity War. Like, for me, it's that same, like, the popcorn eating, just stuff my face with sugar and salt while I watch goddamn. While I watch a movie.
Theater experience.
Yeah. Like, the Make Me a Child Again. Endgame, for sure, like, nothing has come close to that. But then Parasite, like, and it might just be the recency bias, but I really, really doubt it. Like, I think it was so fucking good. But before we, like, kind of really, really get into it, like, what did you...
Well, I kind of have that same distinction in a way, where I don't like to necessarily think of, like, popcorn movies as a whole as being different from, your smaller indie movies, like, that, that said, it is easy to think of it that way, in the sense that Endgame is probably going to be the movie I'll always remember this year for. And when I think of just my best theater experiences of the year, of the decade, of my entire life, like, Endgame is probably the number one, if not in the top 3. So it's just hard for me to take that and try to qualify it with all these, like, oh, but it's just because it's part of a franchise. Oh, it's just because of the action. Like, all these different things. And, like, separate it and be like, oh, well, it's not as good a movie as something else. When it just really genuinely hit me in the same way, like, any of my favorite movies do.
Emotions are legitimate either way.
Yeah, exactly. That said, I do want to at least shout out some other movies that, like, are at least in contention. Because Endgame, when it came out, it was just one of those, like, oh yeah, favorite superhero movie, favorite MCU movie, favorite movie. Sort of how the same way I felt when I left the theater in 2012 after seeing The Avengers. Just, like, that fucking changed me. Like, I am, like, such a bigger fan of this than I already was now. But I've been tracking all the movies I saw this year and giving them, like, a grade ranking. So, A, B, C, D, E, but with S as, like pretty much in video games and shit. Like, when you just like, nail it. Like, just 100%, like, like an A+, essentially. Like, just something, like... And the way I think about it is that it's not only something I consider a great movie that I would, like, want to study and whatever, but also a movie that hit me very personally on a level that makes it in the conversation of one of my favorite movies. And this year there were 6 of those. So my S-rank movies of 2019, all of which I feel like deserve the spotlight, were Endgame, also in the MCU, Spider-Man Far From Home. I loved it. Rocket Man, the Elton John, Taron Egerton biopic, played by Taron Egerton. He's not the center of the biopic. That would be interesting, though, to, like, do a biopic about an actor who has been in biopics.
I was going to say, like, they reveal that Elton John has secretly been playing Taron Egerton this entire time. Like, just in Kingsman, he just, like, takes off his... Oh, no, they were together in Kingsman. He was
in Kingsman 2. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah. I wonder if there was overlap in those production cycles.
There must have been. It must have been. Or, like, Elton John, like, must have been like, hey, you know what? I met some kid and I want him to play me now.
And then I also had Blinded by the Light, which is just another movie seeped in 70s and 80s rock nostalgia that for some reason I connected to, even though it's not like I listen to 70s and 80s rock all the time.
It works.
And then Jojo Rabbit and Honey Boy. Those are probably my 2 and 3 of the year, if not, like, my number 1. If I really had to, like, if I really thought about it, maybe they would get higher than Endgame. But they're just, like, incredibly powerful movies in completely different ways, and also theater experiences I will never forget. And this was, I think, a good year overall for movies. Like, when on my rankings, I have a shit ton of movies in the A rank. That's, like, the most populous out of all my rankings. And there was only a few that I thought were, like, below their potential. And I don't think I saw any movie that I out and out hated this year.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't see that many movies this year, but I know that, like, for every movie that I haven't seen yet, like, I will enjoy it. It's just a matter of, like, not having physically gone out to see it, or not having, like, sat through the however the fuck long The Irishman is. Like I know that I'm
gonna I haven't watched that yet.
Enjoy it or whatever.
That's gonna come eventually.
Eventually. All right, so kind of moving on to game of the year. You want to start? Like, what did you really have?
See, this is the opposite of movies for me. I saw, like, I think almost 40 new releases movie wise, which is like I've seen more movies in a year before, but that was like when I was in high school and I had very little else to do. The fact that I saw as many movies as I did this year is like something I'm very proud of because it was something I really actively wanted to do. That said, that did not happen for games for me. And I typically see more movies than games because the time commitment and cost commitment is so much lower. Yeah. But at the same time, like last year, 2018, or 2 years ago, 2018 was like a banner year for games. Like, even though I probably still only played maybe like 5 to 10 new releases at most, definitely no more than like 10, I still can confidently say it was like tough to decide my game of the year that year because Smash Bros, Red Dead, Spider-Man, like all these like AAA hitting it out of the park games. 2019, I struggled to remember the games I did play this year. I almost felt like should I count Smash Bros because it came out so late in 2018. But even then, like as much as I love Smash Bros and I've still managed to somehow put over 100 hours into it, I don't feel like it's like captured me as much as some of the other Smash Bros is in terms of just playtime and like mental commitment. So just sort of by default, I would go with Pokemon Shield. We spent pretty much 2 episodes talking about Pokemon. And for a minute there, it really got me back in. I haven't really played a lot in the last couple weeks. Part of that is that I got Jedi Fallen Order, which is also in contention, but I haven't even beaten that yet. And then like the only other game I could potentially think of was Super Mario Maker 2. Because I'm just a huge fan of that game and concept, and I think it's one of the smarter things Nintendo's ever put together and released. That said, if we're, again, going off of like playtime and like actually capturing my attention, probably played a lot more Skyrim and other older games, Overwatch, whatever, this year,
Yeah. No, this year's honestly been like the year of the backlog for me, because like I've been going back and like actually playing games that I've like wanted to play for a while. Like I've been playing a lot. Like this obviously doesn't count for like the game of the year or whatever. But I've been like playing through more of The Witcher now, and like playing through more of Divinity: Original Sin. Divinity is very much like I'll play for an hour and either be like, okay, I'm gonna play this nonstop for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I'm just not gonna play this for a month and then forget everything about this game and then get too scared to play it again. Like, but I guess for this year specifically, getting back into Destiny 2 with Shadowkeep, like I count it. Like at first I was like, maybe it should be Pokemon Shield or a Sword for me.
Yeah,
because I did play that like heavily for when I like when I was in it, but then I dropped off pretty hard. But like Destiny 2, bring like the new light expansion. I mean that's kind of why I think it's a new game in air quotes in 2019. Right. The way they revamped kind of how the armor works and how the monetization works, and now that they're free, Bungie's free of Activision, like it really does feel like a different game than when Destiny 1 launched to when Destiny 2 launched to when all of the kind of like DLC packs came out, the expansions rather. I think like I care about Destiny's story now because I wanted to in the past and couldn't. Now I'm like actually invested.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that I don't want to give up in convincing you that, and I know that you're just like not super into it, but like the gameplay loop of knowing that at all times I have something that I can work toward, like, okay, I can do this one activity, grind out these 3 like bounties, quest, like weapon quests or whatever, like there's always something for me to like work toward, and getting there is fun. And like I think that more than any other game this year, like I felt like I had things to do in Destiny, and I wanted to do those things. Yeah, I mean, a weird other shout out, I guess, for game of the year, like Sayonara Wild Hearts specifically, but also Apple Arcade as like a weird.
Just an Apple Arcade game. Yeah, I had no idea. I've never heard of that game at all.
Most of Apple, like the games that I've played on Apple Arcade have been fantastic, and like it's surprising. Like I don't know I don't feel comfortable giving any individual Apple Arcade game of the year, but like Mini Motorways, Grindstone, Sayonara Wild Hearts specifically, fantastic games.
Speaking of which, I got back into Pokemon Go this year, which same. I did not expect to happen.
Yeah.
It's consistently got better. Like, there's a most improved award. It could go to that. You know. I would also like to shout out Star Wars Battlefront 2, which I didn't put a lot of hours into this year. That to be honest, but when I was playing it, it was really fun. And like that, just 2 years later, it's managed to become the game it always should have been at launch. You know, if we were to like the Battlefront 3 I always wanted off of the old series is, you know, if this had been if Star Wars Battlefront 2 by EA and DICE as it is in 2020 were released in 2015 when the first Star Wars Battlefront came out, it would have been like, yeah, that was the game I was waiting for. I still might have been a little disappointed. That said, like it's got everything that like I wanted that game to be. It doesn't have that like one thing that makes it absolutely great. I don't know what that would be because there was a lot of stuff promised in that original Battlefront 3, but it is definitely a most improved contender because the fact that they've been doing it all as unpaid DLC too shows that they're like, I don't know if any executive at EA gives a shit about it anymore, but they're at least allowing enough money to pump through DICE to work on it that, you know, it must at least be a thing that the people who develop the game actually give a shit about, you know?
I mean, I feel like they're worried that Disney's going to pull the Star Wars license from EA. Like, I mean, not so much after Jedi Fallen Order, especially, but like before that, like what was the great Star Wars game? Like,
I mean, EA didn't really have one under their roof, and that's the thing is Battlefront 2 had to like literally crawl its way to it, which is, you know, good for them, but at the same time,
and like Battlefront 2 was coming off of like the disappointing Battlefront 1.
Exactly, yeah.
So like if they having to fight back, they lost again, and then, you know, now it's like Bob Iger staring at you.
I mean, I don't know. Like if they make a Battlefront 3, I now have confidence that they know what they need to do to make it right, because I feel like a lot of people have been reappraising Battlefront 2 lately and being like, oh, this game is good now. It's just too little too late. That's
I know that IGN reviewed it and gave it like, is it like high 80s, I think? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, so if they kept it going, that would be great, but you know, it needed to do this at launch, because it's just like, I'm not about to get fully into Battlefront 2 again. I'll play it occasionally, but that's pretty much it. Yeah. So
I guess a weird shout out / EA doing a decent thing. And also I like the way this was done. Shout out to Apex Legends. Like, you love it or hate it, the way that they literally just, hey, here's this game. We're going to show you what this game is, and we're just going to stream it all day. And we're going to get a bunch of people to stream it all day. And now I'm curious as to what Apex Legends is. This looks fun. It's out now and it's free? All right, now I'm playing day one. Like, I love that strategy, and I hope that more games do that in the future. I guess that's my, like, end for 2019, like my love for gaming in 2019.
Well, real quick off of that, just shout out to Respawn for a big year.
Respawn, oh my god,
especially because they like kind of fucked up the launch of Titanfall 2 so much. Not them, but EA, and like you know, like I haven't played it yet.
It's so good
because I got it like really late for sale. But you know, obviously it was incredibly well reviewed. It just had a shitty launch window up against Battlefield and Call of Duty in like the same week-long span. And you know, that's shitty for that developer. EA does that shit all the time. They like really devour studios and chew them out until there's nothing left, and
then at least down.
And then Respawn had like a massive year for them. I mean, Apex like didn't do Fortnite numbers, but it's still like incredibly popular.
It's biting at Fortnite's numbers. Like, it's insane.
And then I mean, doing essentially the complete opposite, which is an entirely single-player adventure game in Star Wars in Fallen Order.
No monetization. At all, from what I can tell. Like, I haven't seen any
genuine care put into the story. You know, getting like legit actors and like going that extra mile to do all the performance capture and stuff. Like, you know, it really is like them making up for it in a big way. How they've done it for the last couple of years. But
they know.
They know. Respawn saved Star Wars and video games and gave Fortnite an actual run for its money. So
and now Vince Zampella is running DICE in LA. So you know,
EA's on the.
They understand now.
Yeah, they're still shitty.
They're not.
Anthem
like
came out this
forgiven.
last year.
Yeah,
so you know, Not to say EA is out of the woods yet, or ever will be.
Okay, actually, you know what? That said, now I'm interested because I heard that they're about to like completely revamp Anthem. Like I'm not saying by the end of this year,
so
but
they could Battlefront to it. Yeah,
the promise of Anthem is still awesome to me. So like, if they can make that work, I want it to work. But like,
I mean, there's been a lot of like that's been one of the cool things, and we'll get into other like just kind of more broad decade-long topics, but just the fact that games can be fixed now is like so shitty in that it like so many games release unreleased, but in the cases of like Battlefront 2 or No Man's Sky or whatever, where
No Man's Sky,
the game was released quote unquote unfinished, but really it was finished. It just wasn't. It was just a disappointment based on the promises. It's like they put it out completely with the intention of putting out a product that they didn't promise, not with just not meeting the expectations. Like they were completely underwhelming, and yet they've managed to evolve over time is something that never could have happened before. I don't know, 2009 maybe. I mean, like even then, like they didn't do that level of patching in the early like. I'm
trying to think of when like day one patches were really like a thing, because I feel like it was more in like
day one patches are kind of what I'm trying to say to avoid. It's more like don't release a game that's full on broken and you need to download in order to actually not have it crash on you every 5 minutes, which is like frankly what happened to every Bethesda game ever released, even Skyrim the best PS3, ones.
Oh my god, Skyrim PS3. All right. No, let's.
Speaking of things that can't be patched,
cats. No.
Well, movies apparently can be patched. Yeah, but TV shows.
TV shows.
Sad transition, but
yeah, my just. Watchmen. It's Watchmen. Like, so easily Watchmen. Like, it was so good. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, I'll leave it at that. It was fantastic. Beginning to end, like, no, okay, I'm going to keep gushing a little bit. Like, every episode, it was genuinely, like, oh, okay, so, like, this was the best episode. And then next week, oh, okay, so this was the best episode. And then and it, like, just keeps getting better and better and better. And, like, I think Damon Lindelof does a great job of like asking or making you ask questions and then like actually answering them this time. Because like I've loved him since The Leftovers and Lost, and I've not really cared about like answers or anything like that. Like I'm totally fine just not knowing shit. But like I don't know, with Watchmen, like
I'm sorry, keep talking about Watchmen. There's an alarm going off in another room.
I mean, it's really hard to not spoil it. I'll talk kind of about my like honorable mention, which is Succession. Succession, I didn't expect to love the ongoing story of it. I think the first season kind of like was a very slow burn and kind of meandered for a while, and like you didn't really know where it was gonna go. And then after like the big thing that happens at the end of the first season, you're kind of like, okay, you know what? So one, I need to know how this new dynamic that was set up between the family, like how that plays out, how this new just facet to a character that like you hadn't seen before, like someone that was trying to be like, like for all intents like just the big guy, and now you're just like, all right, you have no spine anymore, and we see the reason why you have no spine anymore, but you can't tell anyone, and like,
what are you talking about?
Succession.
Yeah, another show I haven't watched.
HBO's killing it.
Yeah, HBO and Disney, I think, proved this year, or I keep saying this year. We're gonna pretend it's still 2019 for the sake of this. This year proved that the binge model is not the way to go. Like just between like all the conversation about Watchmen, Game of Thrones every week, even like Barry and shit. Like it just, and of course The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. It's just. I'm glad we're back to that. I think it always was better. Plus, it's more manageable to watch TV when you only have to watch one episode a week versus like having to watch an entire season in 2 weeks. Otherwise, you'll miss the entire conversation.
Yeah, and it kind of like gives the, I don't know, like for me when Game of Thrones was on, like Sunday was like Game of Thrones day.
Yeah,
and like if I'm watching, I don't know, like It's Always Sunny or whatever. Like Wednesday or like Atlanta, like Wednesday is FX day. Like that's the
Friday was Mandalorian day.
Yeah, yeah. So it just gives you things to like different checkpoints during the week, kind of to be like, okay, here's where I am with these.
Because the convenience of streaming is still there. Like if you don't have the time to watch it as it's airing, it'll always be there, so you can still go back and watch the entire series. Like the fact that I can go and binge Game of Thrones in 2 months like I did, and then on the same platform watch it week by week. But if I didn't get to watch it right when it aired, I could watch it 2 hours later, and it, I didn't have to worry about recording it or whatever. It was just there. It's the preferred model. I mean, almost every show that's had like the binge model, like Stranger Things or whatever, I rarely ever watch it all in a single weekend. It usually takes me forever to finish it, especially if I'm watching multiple things at once. And it's just like, I feel it's just so much more pressure to watching it, Yet I still get the appeal of there's plenty of shows where I'll miss a week and then I'll just binge 2 episodes. And I'm like, there, I still got to like binge it and catch up, but now I'm a part of that week's conversation.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And honestly, I think the fact that I wanted to give the internet a shout out, because I think
why? Well, what if they deserve
in the good internet, like the internet that comes together with theories and stuff. That's one of the benefits of I like binging because it's you get to just it's your own pace, but I do like being able to come every. I know that as soon as fucking Watchmen is over, I can go to the internet and no one is going to know anything more than me. But some people might be smarter and figure it out, and then I can feel like I'm a part of that group. And and also memes are just fantastic. The quickness to which you'll see an episode of Mandalorian and then
that episode's Baby Yoda gifs are already
on the internet, already hilarious, already
Well, and the thing is the appeal of the way binge shows like Stranger Things are typically, the good ones are crafted in a way where an episode ends and you immediately want to start the next one. But they can still do that if the episodes are week by week and it's causing enough conversation, because it'll still be fresh on your mind because you've been thinking about it all week, talking about it with people every day. And you can go on right before the episode airs and still see the memes from last week and remind yourself what happened in that episode. Plus, I mean, those recaps are always there, and those are if it's been less than a week since you've seen the episode, the recap will at least spark up enough of a memory of it in your head. If you don't
remember that one specific line of dialogue, you'd be oh yeah, the dagger.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sure there's a bit of a different way. They're not gonna make streaming type shows to air week by week. There will be a little less of that, I gotta press the next one cliffhanger at the end of every episode, but they can still attain a lot of that. I mean, I binged half the shows that are considered like Breaking Bad is a show I binged. Barry, which I want to shout out as one of the best shows of the year. That is something I binged, even though it was released week by week, and I still enjoyed it.
It is very bingeable, though.
Yeah, it didn't feel like I had to wait in between episodes or anything like that. It's just one continuous chapter by chapter story. And I mean, even though I feel that way about Mandalorian, and I'm glad that came out the way it did, I will say the best shows I watched this year were all things I did end up binging. I don't know how Amazon releases their shows, but I watched Fleabag all in one go, and that's definitely up there for one of the best shows of the year. That and Barry are just some of the best written content I've seen. In
terms of Amazon, I want to shout out Good Omens by Neil Gaiman with what's his name, David Tennant and Michael Sheen. Because that was, I think, 8 episodes. It was really, really good. I remember just seeing a bunch of ads for it all over the place, and then just being like, you know what, fuck it. I like Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Started the first episode and was like, you know what, I have nothing to do this weekend. Let's just. Anytime I between just doing laundry and stuff, I'm gonna put on Good Omens, watch, and then I am completely engaged out of nowhere. The writing is so good, and the effects are actually pretty good. Frances McDormand is the voice of God.
That's a good God voice.
Yeah, good selling point right there.
I was curious about that. I meant to start watching that. I don't watch nearly enough of Amazon stuff. Fleabag was the first Amazon original that I really committed to, and it's 2 short seasons, so it's so easy to get through. But I know I need at some point I need to start Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or whatever, and just watch those shows that are now Amazon staples. But I think our show of the year, our other than our individual the things we watched and discussed every week, but for us, I think the show that defined our 2019 in television would be I Think You Should Leave. on Netflix.
Easily.
The best binging experience I had all year.
Easily.
Just watching through that in one go. It didn't take, it's like 2 hours, I think, to watch the whole thing all in one go. Yeah. It's just 6 episodes. Each one's like 15 minutes long.
Like less than 15 minutes. It's
best, quick. Most, like, the tightest, most perfect little piece of sketch comedy television.
Just,
like, yeah.
And it's like really well paced. Like,
it flows perfectly, like
there have been times like you'll want to show someone you know, like a skit, and then the next one starts and you're like, okay, well, also let's switch for this one, and then you finish the show. It's like whenever you start the show, you finish the entire thing.
Yeah, every time I've rewatched it, which has been a lot already in the 6 months since I've seen it, has been like a situation where the next episode would come on and be like, oh, this is a great episode. And then I'd watch it. And then, oh, this is a great episode. And just because the first skit and the last skit of every episode is so memorable. And honestly, pretty much every skit is. But it's those, like, as soon as an episode ends, it's on a high note. Yeah. And it makes you want to see more. And then you know the next skit is going to be great because it starts and they're in the Magician's Club. Yeah. And then you're just like, oh, fuck. Well, I can't turn it off now.
It's one of the most quotable shows of the year, if not the most quotable show of the year. Like, I can't, like, I feel like I personally hype up a lot of stuff, but like this is genuinely like the funniest show of 2019, like hands down.
No one I know who has seen all of it
sometimes
wasn't
watching the show.
Yeah, like
it's so good.
I know some people who started it and weren't like a huge fan, and like there are definitely skits, especially even in that first episode, that took me 1 or 2 tries to really get. But almost everyone I know who has seen the entire thing has ended up loving it. I feel like it's popular, but I need it to have that extra bit of like just influence. To really be recognized for how good it is, because I'm a fan of SNL now. I think they're doing great, but after this show came out, it just made me realize how not funny SNL is by comparison. Just like how hilarious even just one skit of I Think You Should Leave is, and you know how like often I'm just kind of like that was all right. Yeah. To an SNL skit, and that's what I consider a great sketch show right now. It's like my bar is too low. Like I need to hold them to a higher standard because I Think You Should Leave is just knocking it out of the park.
And it's just strange. It's just that perfect amount of weird, like like I think the thing with SNL, like the problem with SNL is like it's trying to be both like political and topical and also like fun, like just the right amount of like edge, fun, and yay. Yeah. Like I Think You Should Leave is just like, look, you're either going to be with us or not, and we don't care.
You got to lean into the weirdness, I think, you know? Because, like, sketch comedy to me is, like, all the, like, standard setups have been done already, you know? Like, it's just, you have to do something really different to stand out, and they do a really good job of it. We have so much sketch comedy now, and, like, YouTube has more sketch comedy than you could ever need and never have to pay for it. And yet, you know, like, we need stuff like I Think You Should Leave to remind us, like, no, this is, like, the top tier. Yeah. Like this is this is like Key and Peele in their prime, like Chappelle Show in their prime. Like every one of these is like out of your fucking chair funny, you know?
Never bored at all.
And frankly, in 2019, which was not an easy year overall in the rest of the world, the fact that it was like not even that like topical, but not in a bad way. Like it's stupid and like almost timeless enough that I feel like I'll be able to watch it in 10 years and just like laugh as stupidly at as I did before.
Like the fact that some of the funniest jokes in the show are just poop jokes. Yeah,
like exactly.
It's just people saying funny words like bones.
People like, acting stupid. Yeah. Like,
some just people spitting a little bit. Like it's
just pure like unfiltered comedy and like it's not trying to like I don't know. Like, it's just not trying to do too much. It feels so
it doesn't feel like it's trying to win anything.
You know? Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't feel like it's trying to prove anything.
And for that reason, it should have won every award, honestly.
Exactly.
All right. So before we move on to the entire decade, we just want to kind of give general shout-outs for this year. Because I think overall, I was disappointed in some aspects, completely blown away in others. I would say 2019 is one of the better years of the decade in terms of pop culture. You know, there were like definitely low points in the year, but the high points were really, really high. There was just a lot that happened this year, I feel like. It was just a packed year.
I feel like especially coming after 2018 though, like it just felt like kind of the exhale. Like a very much like, all right, like 2018 happened and now 2019 is just like we're just chilling. Like I never really felt like super hyped for anything this year. Like I was like there were things to look forward. I mean, not like super. I mean, other than Endgame.
Well, I was gonna say one of my points on this year is that this is like the year where like a bunch of franchises like either ended or like wrapped up major. I mean, essentially ended. I mean, some are gonna continue, but it's like the end of an era in so many ways. Like it was, I think, a very fitting last year of the decade to have this, like what we had this year between the Infinity Saga ending and Endgame, and well, Spider-Man Far From Home, but Endgame. The Skywalker saga ended. Even though it fizzled out, this was the year where I was going to say Fox's X-Men franchise.
That too.
But Game of Thrones too. Game of Thrones, I think, went out with a little less of a whimper and more of a thud. Whereas like Fox's X-Men was just like, yeah, the least successful movie in the franchise. Not necessarily critically, because there's other ones that maybe people hated more, but just in terms of forgettable, made no money, essentially was just put out because they made it. Movie came out, and then Game of Thrones was like so much hype until the third episode, and then everyone was like, "Oh no, something's wrong! Yeah. Something wrong is happening."
Wait,
you know? Yeah,
they fucked it up.
But yeah, I mean, for better or worse, this was. It's funny because there is a lot of huge stuff that's also forgettable this year, and I think that's why this is just like sort of the peak of pop culture in this decade, for like better or worse, you know, like we have hit the fever pitch, and like we're ready for things to change. And I think, you know, you can see how like we got the best and worst examples of all the things that like defined pop culture in the 2010s were like culminated in this year.
Just get it all out.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like, all right, like, this was the 2010s. We're just gonna be done with it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I'm trying to think like there was less in video games in that way. But at the same time, you know, you had like Fortnite coming back in a big way. You had like
you had Fortnite shutting down for a few days and having people lose their minds.
Yeah, like Fortnite. The first era of Fortnite also ended this year, and the new one started, and it basically cemented the fact that like this game is not going away. You know, like it's probably hit its peak, but it's not going away.
Like I'm trying to think of any kind of like Call of Duty. Maybe.
Excuse me.
Like no, Call of Duty still has like the. I mean, I guess you. Another shout out. Now that I mention it, the new Call of Duty like genuinely does feel like a return to like old Call of Duty. Like I honestly don't play it as much as like I do Destiny, but like it is still like when I get angry at Destiny, I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna play some Call of Duty.
Okay, so my question is this are there gonna be a second Modern Warfare 2 now?
I don't know.
Because like I think it'd be really funny if it turns out Call of Duty is just on a 10-year cycle that just does this every 10 years. Every 10 years is a new Modern Warfare.
Yeah, all right. I mean, honestly, I would be not super surprised if they just took a knee on next year. Like, I doubt they will. I'm sure they've already announced the new game or whatever, but like, if they had just said, okay, you know what? Call of Duty's good again. Like it's fun. I think a lot of people don't like. I know that the hardcore audience is like really upset with this new game because like one, it's bringing in the fucking casuals like me. That like, you know, old Call of Duty. When I think of old Call of Duty, I think like the 360 no scope, throwing the throwing knife across the crazy twitchy. You know? And now it is very much. I'm going to slowly approach this door. I'm going to mount this door. I'm going to turn the corner quickly. There's no one coming. Bet. Now I'm going to walk slowly. And, like, I'm going to, you know, like everything's going to be very tactical. And I like that. I think it's, like, it's not necessarily what Call of Duty used to be, but, like, it's how I think about Call of Duty back then. Like, it's the, like, maybe slow physically, but, like, it looks, or the decision-making is a bit more snappy and a bit more, like you gotta think more long term, but then I don't know. I want to play Call of Duty now. Yeah, I'm feeling the twitch.
Fuck. I'm sorry, my throat.
Pause for a second.
Let's get back into it. I got a cough drop. What? I don't know what you were talking about. Did we finish? Oh yeah, we're just in shout outs.
Yeah. Shout out to fucking Broly.
Dragon Ball movie.
Dragon Ball. Yeah. Like I.
Get this cough drop open.
I don't know. There's not too much to say about it. It's just if you were into like Broly's my second favorite Dragon Ball villain, second to Cell, and his origin. used to be dumb and I didn't care,
Yep.
but now it's actually cool. That's it. And the movie's like dope. It's like if it's what, an hour and a half, first 15 minutes you get some like good story, and then after that it's just, hey, let's just fight. Let's just fight and let's make it awesome. Let's make it so fucking awesome the entire time. And like you feel it in your veins as you're watching. Like
it's the Rise of Skywalker approach.
Yeah. No, but it's like Rise of Skywalker still feels like a movie. Like I'm telling you, it is just fighting. And not like we're gonna fight and then there's gonna be a break in the fight and then we're all gonna go into our separate corner and we're all gonna like and then I'm gonna come back and they're gonna be like, there's gonna be a rhythm to it and like you're gonna be able to take a breath. No, it's just the only like pauses in the movie are for fight, like for yelling and turning your hair a different color to then punch harder. Like it's
honestly, dude,
awesome.
If I feel like this started years ago, but particularly if I could show 2018 and 2019 to myself in 2010, I would be shocked. Just like showing like Endgame, or Infinity War, Endgame, Smash Ultimate, even just like Spider-Man in the MCU, like to myself back in 2010, I would not believe that was possible. Like things were already sort of starting to pop off at the beginning of the decade, but like cough
indeed.
It's a different ball game now,
honestly.
Whew.
And I guess like very weak last shout out to Death Stranding. I will beat you. That's it.
I would say our return to Overwatch was a pretty significant part of 2019, because that was like easily one of my favorite games that I didn't play it for a year. I had a huge drop off with that, and then we got back into it. Like same for Fortnite. Shout out Fortnite. I got back into it, but just it was not the same thing. Like ultimately, it was just like, oh, this feels like Fortnite felt when I first played it. But Overwatch like has like gotten me back into it to the point where it's like it genuinely feels very different from when we were first playing it.
Yeah,
like the same grind, same rush, but like it just feels so much more satisfying to play.
It feels like there's an actual like law to the land now.
Yeah, exactly. It feels so much more controlled. And then just there were great years for superhero movies this decade, and we'll talk about more of them, but this was, I think, just a major year. We talked about the fact that it culminated so much, but just between Endgame, Spider-Man, and Captain Marvel, Marvel had such a crazy year. Yeah, Dark Phoenix petered out, but like Joker and Shazam were two completely different types of successes for DC, who had just, because like Aquaman was like really popular, but like I don't think anyone even who liked it necessarily thinks a whole lot about it, like there's probably some really diehard Aquaman movie fans, but yeah, that's all I got for 2019.
Yeah, I mean 2019, glad it's over.
Yeah, it was good, but not great.
Yeah, it happened. It set up a lot for 2020. I'm excited.
Honestly, I think the fact that Endgame came out as early in the year as it did just kind of made everything else after it. Just like we had hit that fever pitch like right at the beginning.
Yeah, and then Game of Thrones immediately after, and you're just like, oh.
So they won't all feel like that?
Yeah, like you can fuck things up. Okay.
Yeah, and then by the time Rise of Skywalker came out, I was just like, this could go either way. I don't really care.
So was Rise of Skywalker the movie of the decade, though?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely the best movie of the decade, without a doubt.
Okay,
Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is the best film of the decade.
We will get into
the highest cinematic achievement of the decade.
Rise of Skywalker soon. I'm excited about that. Not on this episode, but next episode.
I mean, this decade in movies is like so much of pop culture this decade is important to me because it's such a large part of my life, but specifically like movies this year or this decade were like cemented to me as my most like favorite art form, like as a kid I probably put just as many hours into games as I did movies, and probably still now just by pure virtue of how long games take I probably put more hours into video gaming, but like really just committing myself to going to the theater frequently is something that I managed to do for a large percentage of this decade, and just seeing so many movies and knowing how much I love being in a movie theater. Like there were just some amazing films that will always be like my favorites of all time. I could even feel it as we got towards the end of the decade that I wasn't as impacted by movies individually as I was,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like in 2014 when I saw like, you know, a shit ton of movies in theaters every week I was going. You know, I saw like 5 of like my favorite movies of all time that year. Just it was like the perfect scenario for me. So I mean, my movie of the decade is my favorite movie of all time,
Mm-hmm.
which is The Way Way Back, which is just a very personal selection in that that movie just feels like my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like not in that it's a movie about a kid with a shitty stepfather and I don't have a stepfather, let alone a shitty one. So it's not that I can relate very specifically to that, but the entire vibe of the movie like literally was filmed in an area where I basically grew up, where my grandparents lived, and like it just reminds me of a time in my life that feels timeless. So it's just one of those movies where I saw it, I was like, is that my favorite movie of all time? The next time I saw it, it cemented it for me, and you know, it's just it hit me at the exact perfect time that it might never get dethroned. You know, it'll just always be my default choice, even if there are other movies that I'm more obsessed with. Like, I there are other movies that I would want to study more. There's other movies that I would want to spend more time with, but this is just something that I will watch like every 6 months until the day I die. Like, I will see this movie like as in that it'll occupy that space in my head, I think, forever. Which makes it my favorite movie of the decade. With plenty of honorable mentions that we can get into, but I don't want to take all the time here.
No, I mean, my favorite movie of all time was not from this decade, but my second favorite movie of all time, Whiplash.
Oh, yeah.
So, I, like, the more I kind of, like, will retool my, like, favorite movies of all time, and I haven't done it in a while, but, like, Whiplash is always, like, right under The Incredibles. I don't play the drums. I am not super musically inclined. Like, I mean, I like music, don't get me wrong, but, like, I'm not, like, a musician. Like, I don't have that level of, like, it, I don't know. Like, I think the fact that from beginning to end, I am, like, so engaged and so on the edge of my seat. And I, like, so care about, like, I'm just invested in Miles Teller's, like, career.
Yeah.
In the movie. And, like, as soon as J.K. Simmons is on screen, like, I am just, like, I know that he's an actor in a movie, but I, as, you know, the audience, I'm, like, sitting at attention.
Yep.
Like, trying not to be seen by this dude.
Yep.
Because he'll fucking eviscerate me. Like...
It's such a masterwork, like in every sense of the way. Like
the music is fantastic. Like I listen to the soundtrack. Like it's fucking like just, and I don't do that with most movies. Like I know that like I think you and like some kids from school were like some of the first people that I'd ever met that had like just they would listen to movie soundtracks, like movie scores and stuff like that. And like with Whiplash, I understand. Like I get it now. And like the little like. It's really, 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 really minor and dumb and probably not, like, the reason to have this as my movie of the decade. But, like, in the scene where he's talking to Supergirl.
Melissa Benoist?
Yeah. Like his...
Benoit?
You know, his... really
his girlfriend in this movie.
Yeah, but, like, not... Love interest. There we go. Yeah. I was trying to think of, like, the overall term. Because, like, they break up and I think that dynamic is funnier. Or not funnier, but, like...
Yeah, their interaction after they break up is
like
good.
That was like that was in the trailer. All that to say, they're like eating pizza and drinking soda or whatever, and I was both hungry and thirsty watching them eat the fucking food.
Right?
Like, it's a movie about, you know, stress and greatness and legacy and, you know, the toll that, like, you know, your passions have on the person, on the individual, you know. But like, during that like just in the scenes that they need you to like, hey, they're eating food and, you know, just chilling or whatever. Like at dinner when they're with the other family talking about like comparing, do you want to be like a really great D3 star, like athlete, or do you want to be like the greatest drummer who no one knows? Like that kind of comparison. Like, I think it asks a lot of great questions. I think the execution is fantastic, and I think that it deserves a movie of the decade.
Yeah, that's definitely in my top 10 of the decade, if not top 5. It just puts you in the room in every scene.
Oh, yeah.
I think that movie does something great that not enough movies are able to do, because I feel like there's 2 ways to like make a movie about a world that most people don't know and make it accessible. You can either do what most like sci-fi and fantasy movies do, which is just exposition, just full on explain it to the audience. You know, I mean, that's how we get a lot of shit in the MCU, which is great. It's good world building, but it's a very broad sense of world building. It's like, let's make this as easy to understand as possible. We'll literally have a character explain it. Or there's movies like this, or even Parasite, which is just like, we will show you with such vivid detail that this world that it feels familiar after a while. You know, like I have played the drums. I don't think it's fair to call myself a drummer because I haven't in many years, but I grew up playing the drums, and I can tell you I know nothing about this particular world. Like, it's still so inaccessible to me. Like, just even caring that much about one particular thing, like to where I'm literally bleeding over it, is not something I can relate to. And yet, just from minute one to the final seconds of the movie, you just get everything you're seeing because it's just so like completely shown to you. You know, it's that like perfect example of showing, not telling. You know, and I want to shout out 2014 as a year because Whiplash came out that year, Birdman came out that year, The Raid 2 came out that year.
Yeah, 2014.
Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men Days of Future Past all came out that year. There was a Hobbit movie that year. There was
one of the Hobbits.
One of the Hobbits. One of them Hobbits. One of them Smogs.
One of them Rings.
It was a big year for movies. I think that's definitely the year I saw the most movies in theaters, and I think Top 5 came out that year.
I think so. Yeah.
Snowpiercer came out that year. Speaking of Parasite and Bong Joon-ho, like that's my introduction to him. That was a crazy year for movies. The Lego Movie came out that year, which leads me to, we kind of wrote these in an awkward order, so I'm just going to hop around a little bit. Lego Movie. So we want to talk about our favorite animated movies of the decade, and I don't keep up with animation the way I used to as a kid, where I would see pretty much every major animated movie. So there's a couple I missed. I didn't even see every Pixar movie, which, you know, I probably would have as a kid, but I think the animated movies that really stuck out for me were really two that just like above and beyond, even though I loved like Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4 and Inside Out was great. And again, Pixar movies are like, even the bad ones are like still like as good as most other studios, like average output. But the Lego Movie and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for me are two animated movies that just like stood out on both a very personal level, just being about things that I love, but also stood out in that they took their premise and it like went far beyond it, you know? Like,
yeah, the Lego Movie was really, I remember when they announced that, I was like, okay, so we're just out of ideas now.
Yeah.
And then I cried, so I was just like, all right, I guess Lego has, you know, good character development, and like I can feel things. Like that was a huge surprise.
Yeah, it just perfectly justified its existence, and same with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. When they announced that, I was like, okay, seems weird. Seems like a weird call. Why are we doing this? Like, Sony just can't just have one Spider-Man. Like, we got to milk this franchise for all it's worth. And it was amazing. It was literally incredible on almost every single level, and so far beyond what it really had a right to be. And Lord and Miller just were able to do that with two major like risks, you know? I mean, even just their entire like it seems like their entire filmography is these kinds of risks, you know? Like, how do we revive a really cheesy 80s show in 21 Jump Street? And they'd made it into one of the more popular,
it's hilarious,
comedy franchises of this decade, you know? And even though they didn't direct Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, you can kind of feel their stamp on it. Or at least, like, their guiding hand clearly, you know, has some sort of positive influence on the projects that they touch. Because, you know, Solo, when they were removed from it, just ended up being forgettable. So, like, you know, I can only imagine what their version of that would have looked like.
I was so excited for their version. And then, you know, restructuring. So, like, for my best animated, it kind of shocked me once I, like, really thought about it. Batman Ninja was so fucking good, and it frustrates me that I don't watch it enough. Like, I will, because I'll forget that I have it, and I'll just be like, it's short, and it is, I mean, not that that's, like, the reason to watch it, but it's short, and you just, I love like, to the same level that Broly kind of has the all right, we're going to set up
Mm-hmm.
what the story is, and then we're just going to let it fucking
Mm-hmm.
just collapse in front of you for who knows how long. Sturgill and Simpson, I'm pretty sure, is like the
Mm-hmm.
animators, like the people behind it. They also just did this. I don't even remember what it's called. Like, it's just this weird, like hour-long album, like visual album. Like it's in this the same kind of similar art style to
Oh.
Yeah, so like
No idea what you're talking about.
I want to give that and I can't. It's Sturgill and Simpson's something.
Something.
Yeah, but like Batman Ninja is what like. I mean, if you haven't seen the art style, it is very hard to describe. That's why I'm just like look up what.
Well,
I'm
I've seen
talking
Batman Ninja.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like Batman Ninja, like
Mm-hmm.
it's got the weird. It looks 2D. Like every time if you pause the movie, it looks like you can tell what is going on screen. Like at every point, and they have like weird cell shading effects and like the violence in it is very like it's Batman, but it's still like hardcore anime.
Yeah.
Like it's like I would be like if I was 13 and watched this movie, I would feel like I would feel like I'd be okay showing a 13-year-old this movie, but also like you would be radicalized.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd be like, all right, this is a lot. Like this is more. This is not Batman the Animated Series or Justice League. Like this is some adult like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm mostly excited to see how animation gets weirder in the future, because also they play with the idea that you know what, like it's Batman, he can do some cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have him go uphill on the not uphill up a like giant
Mm-hmm.
arm. Did you see Batman Ninja?
Yeah.
We watched it together.
You showed it to me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I always forget that I'm with other people when I watch that movie. Like they just and it's the most Bobo movie. It's Batman and ninja and giant robots and giant fighting robots.
I think it's interesting that animation, I feel like, has lost some popularity in the mainstream over this past decade, but almost as a result, the people who are still making animation, like a lot of the direct-to-video DC movies are just like as good or better than they've ever been.
I mean, Justice League: A New Frontier, which came out in 2011, I believe, like that's
really good. Yeah,
like it's really good.
Like a lot of the animation that's coming to some of the streaming services is really good. And it just on TV and in like kids shows, kids animation is probably as good as it's ever been. You know, I mean, we're past the era of just like animation being slapstick comedy or being gross and stupid. Just like because like you know, I love the first set of SpongeBob, but what made SpongeBob and like Ren and Stimpy and a lot of that earlier Nickelodeon stuff work is that they were just kind of being like off-putting, you know, or like a little strange. And now it's like I'm not like a huge fan of adult animation, and it's just like a personal thing. But I can completely recognize how shows like BoJack Horseman, have,
Archer has been,
you know, like Big Mouth. Like these are like the weird ass shows, but not in the sense of like just being weird for the sake of being weird. Like they're just all different types of animation now is out there, and it seems to be in the best form it can be for whatever they're trying to do. You know, like.
Agreed.
Like, I just... Fucking Big Mouth. I can't watch it, but people love that show, and it's just ridiculous what they're able to get away with on that show. Like,
yeah, I'm the more I watch it, the less... I mean, I haven't seen the most recent season, just because I'm kind of over it. Like, I laughed at it. Like, it was funny, but it wasn't, like...
Like, just to think that South
like
Park was, like, the peak of edgy animation, and it's just, like, we've gone so far beyond that at this point, you know?
Yeah. And South Park is kind of... Like, South Park is over itself at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like they're just completely doing it out of obligation at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know?
It's just like, look, I have... Like, yeah, I'll
this
buy
is the most
more...
consistent paycheck we could ever get in our entire career, so why not?
Yeah. Of course, like South Park in the mouth.
Yeah.
All right, most influential movie of the decade? I went with the very extremely unoriginal answer of the Avengers.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I figured
in terms of just having the most impact on the movie industry as a whole, like business practices and at least in terms of franchise and blockbuster filmmaking creative practices, like just the success of the first Avengers, the clear, unequivocal, inarguable success of that movie just made it so clear what everyone else needed to try to do.
The Dark Universe tried and failed.
Yeah,
the
like
DC Extended Universe.
And it's funny because it came out in the same year as Amazing Spider-Man and The Dark Knight Rises, and one was like the end to a trilogy that was very self-contained, and the other was like clearly like what people thought superhero movies were going to look like after the Dark Knight trilogy. Like, The Amazing Spider-Man is, for all intents and purposes, the Dark Knight of the Spider-Man movies. Like, they took it a little more seriously. It's sadder than the Tobey Maguire movies. It doesn't have any of the camp those movies have. And even if, like, it's not necessarily
wait.
as...
Amazing Spider-Man 2 has camp.
Yeah, the second one does, but I'm saying, like, that first one... Like, that's the thing. Amazing Spider-Man 2 feels much more inspired by the Avengers, whereas, like, the first Amazing Spider-Man feels like... I mean, think of, like, Man of Steel the year later. That was them trying to Dark Knight Superman, you know? Yeah. And, like, I feel like everyone thought, like, oh, that dark and gritty, realistic tone is what we're going to go for. And then the Avengers came out, and everyone was like, no, it's franchise building. Like, even DC, they were like, they had finished Man of Steel. They're like, this is going to be a hit, even though everyone likes that Avengers movie now. And then it was a hit, but not as big a hit. So they're like, all right, how many characters can we put in this franchise? And then 3 movies later, and they have to essentially, you know, throw out a life preserver to Wonder Woman and save her from the rest of the franchise, you know? God. Yeah, like...
It blows my mind how much better. Like, and I don't watch the shows, but I know that they are better in how they do that and how they construct the... like, the DC shows on CW, I mean. Like, I saw a picture of Darkseid from the CW Infinite Crisis, whatever, and I'm just like, that is horrible. That is an abomination. But I'm also glad that, you know, someone's getting Darkseid.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, someone is getting a decent... Like, this is now someone's version of Darkseid. So, like, good for them.
Yeah, and I was trying really hard to think of influential movies that weren't just blockbusters. But the thing is, you know, you gotta look at what are the most people seeing, you know? Like, that's, like, who has the most access to something to be influential, you know? Like, I'm sure there's like some movie I've never heard of that's the most influential to the art of filmmaking for the most filmmakers this decade. You know, I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be.
Stop with the violence.
I fidgeted too much. I fidgeted so hard that I broke my pen. But you know, like something like Birdman is like, I guess that's influential maybe, but like it's not like a bunch of people started making a whole bunch of one-take movies after that. With you know, like yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of other like those things are more self-contained, which they absolutely should be. But Avengers just changed the business and the filmmaking of an entire like of the most highly seen types of movies.
It's now, if I'm making a movie, can I make more movies because of this or no? Like
I would say maybe you could give a little bit of like shout out to Force Awakens because that sort of paved the way for things like Jurassic World and these other like nostalgic reboot things. But I mean that was the genius of the MCU is that they're giving us so much that mainstream audiences haven't seen before while also still writing off the nostalgia of these are at least like fairly well-known characters that we can reference the history of, you know?
Yeah, you probably have Hulk hands in your closet.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like the fact that at the beginning of the decade the Hulk was probably the most well-known Avenger is like ridiculous when you think about it now. And so much of that has to do with the fact that in the Avengers the standout characters were like obviously like Iron Man and like Thor or whatever. Like, you know, you had like an entire franchise built off of these characters that were essentially C-listers, and the first Avengers really more than any of them except for maybe Iron Man 1 turned characters that general audience wouldn't normally give a shit about into the biggest household names. Yeah. And same with the actors playing them too.
Yeah. You know, like, I think a new generation knowing who Robert Downey Jr. is good. Like especially going back and watching his older movies where I'm just like, oh, okay, so this is what they meant. Yeah, like
he's been insanely talented in everything he does. Yeah, and you know you can maybe say like Infinity War and Endgame could end up being more influential in terms of like more people saw them and more people I think were like affected by them because that like the end of Infinity War and really the entirety of Endgame, but especially the end of Endgame are like two of the most like memorable, I think, like theater going experiences for a lot of people in a way that maybe less people saw the first Avengers, even though it was a massive hit, you know?
But I think the landscape, like you were saying, like the landscape that was paved after, like, because of, especially, because of fucking Avengers.
Exactly. Yeah. Because Iron Man 1 was a big deal for starting the MCU, but it could have easily just turned into 3 successful Iron Man movies and nothing else if they didn't nail it with Avengers.
All right. You know? So, like, what was your most influential game of the decade? And then we'll kind of we still need to go to the best game.
Go there and then backtrack. Okay.
Go to the best game.
I narrowed it down to 4 contenders, and I honestly can't decide because I think they're all influential in different ways. Mm-hmm. So first is Skyrim.
Okay.
Because it came out at the beginning of the decade, and so many games have taken that form of open world, like, and ran with it. Like, Breath of the Wild is essentially Zelda as Skyrim, you know. Assassin's Creed went more in that direction. And, you know, there's a lot of games you could probably credit for it. Skyrim's essentially just, a bigger Oblivion, so you could even go further back in that way, but I think just the way it's influenced single-player games is massive. I would also give a shout-out to GTA 5, because I think in terms of doing the most in a single game, not only is it just the most successful game of this decade, just in terms of numbers, pure money-making profit, but also it, had a fan base of people who knew open-world games through GTA, but it just became that much more popular, and I wouldn't say it had the same impact on the way games were designed as Skyrim did, but it further cemented for audiences that, like, open world games are the, like, pinnacle of single player, and that's, like, what all single player games should be, for better or worse. And the online, like, thing, again, for better or worse, introduced a shit ton of microtransactions and normalized those in console gaming, like, in non-free-to-play games. It influenced a lot. It used a lot of that mobile games market tactics. There was even the ways you could use your phone in GTA 5 too. Like, just everything about that game and how massive it is, just, I think, puts it at least in the conversation. And then the other 2 big ones, just in terms of cultural impact.
And I feel like I know both of these, and go ahead.
Are Fortnite and Minecraft.
Yep.
So okay, Minecraft, cool. I wasn't really sure because it just, like, it was in beta for so long, and it had this sort of, like, slow crawl to launch. Then Fortnite, I would give the edge to, even though it came later in the decade. I'd say, like, even if I don't know the numbers on, like, players, like, maybe Minecraft in its absolute peak had as many people playing it as Fortnite does, but I would probably assume Fortnite has more, like, just pure numbers popularity in terms of people who are playing it or have played it in its peak. But I think Fortnite is literally, like, yes, it's by no means the first battle royale, and it was pretty blatantly copying another battle royale when it came out, but it completely cemented that genre and became the pinnacle of it too. Like, it proved, like, yes, this is the next big genre, while also making it so hard for any other game in that genre to gain success, because it was, like, the one everyone was playing.
Yeah, it's like the meme.
It's
the ones the parents know about.
Exactly, and just, like, the fact that it was, like, in Endgame, like, the fact that it's, like, referenced on SNL and stuff like that.
It had very key plot points for Rise of Skywalker. Like,
all the crossovers in it. Like, Minecraft,
like, it's an event now. Or, I'm sorry, Fortnite is an event.
I think Minecraft on its own is one of the most popular games of all time, but I think if we're talking about overall influence, there were definitely Minecraft copies, but I think the Fortnite influence on other games that will see similar success, like Apex Legends, like, is much higher than Minecraft. Like, there's no one that even came, like, there's Minecraft and then there's Roblox for the kids who don't know, like, to play Minecraft instead, and that's it. Like, whereas Fortnite, it's like everyone was...
There are Fortnite clones. Like,
there are Fortnite clones, plus every other multiplayer game is like, we're going to do a battle royale. Call of Duty did it. Red Dead did it. Like,
Art styles are, like, now shifting more toward the cutesy Fortnite.
Yeah, like, Overwatch and Fortnite did that together, but really, like, Fortnite made it, like, so, there was that period for, like, most of the decade and the decade before where the most popular multiplayer games were just military shooters. Maybe futuristic military shooters, but military shooters nonetheless. And then this, like, has the military aesthetic, but it looks like a kid-friendly game.
Yeah.
It's not like the most popular game is an M-rated game and somehow most of the people playing it are 13. Like, this actually makes sense.
Yeah, and it's free to play and on fucking everything. So, like, it's hard to avoid, really. And it becomes a matter of just, like, if everyone you know is playing it, like, well, why don't you download it? Like, there's nothing holding you back at this point.
So which would you actually narrow it down to if we have to...
I also want to put in the bucket Dark Souls.
Oh, yeah.
That's just any of the From Software games, because the more I, like... And I also... I've yet to beat a From Software game. I've yet to come close to beating a From Software game. If I'm going to, like...
That's actually a good point.
Like, if I'm putting my money down on something, like, I'm gonna try to beat Bloodborne. Like, I think that's the one for me. Like, I think And now that I like can say I kind of get it now,
Yeah.
like after beating maybe 3 bosses in Sekiro, and I'm just like, okay, like this one is not for me. This one's like
yeah.
You know, I keep hearing the Bloodborne is the good like balance of slow-ish, fast-ish pace. Like it's got a good pace to it. But I think like the atmosphere, the like really over like the physical, like the tactile sense of like okay, everything that I do is going to have like a very serious reaction that if I don't calculate well, I'm either going to die and lose hours of progress, or I'm going to kill this thing and then have one of the greatest just dopamine rushes of my life. I think the way that like Jedi Fallen Order, like one of the things I love about Jedi Fallen Order is that it just so liberally takes from everything else. Like it's just so not at all hiding where
very much in the spirit of Star Wars, just wearing its influences on its sleeve. You know,
but even down to like the more subtle like I think the changes for God of War, like the reason, like because like I don't know, I love God of War obviously, but one of the reasons I think it works so well is because it's changed from that like top down ish. I'm gonna take out a bunch of nonsense zombies and like you know slice through them like butter. In this case, it's like if I get hit, I'm gonna feel hurt. Yeah, like I feel way more attached to my character than I do. You know, like even in Horizon Zero Dawn, like you still like the very quick dodging and the quick blocking, the like weightiness to the attacks. Like I really really appreciate stuff like
it kind of feels like in the first half of the decade everyone was trying to be Skyrim and now everyone's trying to be Dark Souls.
Exactly.
Like and I think you can even see like games like Zelda that were clearly much more Skyrim clones than they were Dark Souls clones, and Zelda's not a clone. Breath of the Wild's a very completely its own game. I'm not trying to say that, but like it's clearly Zelda with that Skyrim inspiration. It's also got elements of the Dark Souls inspiration that games that are coming out now, like Jedi Fallen Order, are much more overtly taking from. And I think you've seen that in just the general like return of the Metroidvania genre this decade. A lot of them are, you know, some of the more retro-inspired ones are much more in that original Metroidvania style, but it feels like Dark Souls and the Souls-like like genre is like the modern equivalent to it. And people like those open world but not open world games, you know?
It's like they give you wiggle room to explore, but it's not like overwhelming.
And it's just the fact that between the Skyrim and the Dark Souls inspiration, every single player game now, with very few exceptions, are open world in some degree, is just clearly a result of the success of those two games and their influence over time. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I would say the big three of the decade are Skyrim, Dark Souls, and Fortnite. Okay. I don't know if I could give it to one. I would be inclined to say Fortnite just in terms of pure overall cultural.
In terms of like changing, you know, changing the world.
But Pokemon Go is also one I consider too. Like that was big. And, you know, it's still the most played game probably of the decade.
Probably.
Like I think we talked about this in the Pokemon episode that it had like 1 billion downloads, which like is just unprecedented. Like
it's probably the biggest game in the world if we're like being real.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk about it.
All right, so let's just talk overall game of the decade. Yeah. What is your favorite game of the decade? And have we mentioned it already?
Yeah, God of War. Like my favorite game of the decade.
Really?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Like, because I think it like, I don't know. When I think about like games and stuff like that, like, and I know that it's a lot of like me being like a fucking closeted nerd in high school where I like, didn't want to like really express my like how nerdy I was and how much I was really into games and stuff like that. I would always feel like anytime a really great game came out, like I would have to, you know, show people like, yo, like this shit's legitimate. Like this is a legitimate art form that should be respected like by the, you know, by the masses. Like I think The Last of Us was that for last generation. Yeah. And God of War was that for this generation. Like until like, it was Horizon Zero Dawn until God of War came out. But, like, I was moved. Like, I cared about everyone. It wasn't so much like, oh, I want to see what happens next. It's like, I'm doing something. Like, I feel so heavily, like, the journey of just taking the ashes to the top of the mountain and then everything that happens along the way and in between and afterwards. Like, anytime I'll just fuck around, jump back in there and like ride around in the boat and listen to Kratos tell stories for a while. Like I think in terms of narrative, it's incredible in terms of gameplay. Obviously, it's like one of the most, like, throwing the Leviathan axe and catching it is hands down the best feeling in games. I think I can't think of anything else. Like a a great game of Overwatch feels like really good, but like just being able to throw, catch, and it sounds so dumb and simple, and like I know that it's been said 1,000 trillion times that this is not an original thought. Like, I'm a Sony Pony fanboy. I don't give a shit. Like, I care about Atreus way too much.
Yeah, this is your Sony Pony shining through.
Yeah, like it's. I mean, also, and the bullshit, like the fact that they went into it's all one shot.
Yeah,
and like knowing the way they break, I'm still like, that's still cool because in the story it would make sense on this level, and the like.
It's like the peak of cinematic influence on games.
Yeah,
I feel like just like it felt like Uncharted was carrying that torch for so many years, and now it's just so many games that are doing that, and God of War is just like taking that to the next level. And
I honestly think the fact that I don't like the Uncharted games as much as I feel like I should as a Sony Pony. Like, I feel like God of War, I feel like it gives me that itch.
It gives you that credibility as a Sony fan.
I mean, not credibility.
I know
like
what you mean, yeah.
Because I'm just like, the cinematic experiences of video games, you know, like you could say, like, I'm too young for the Metal Gear franchise, to be frank. Like I love Metal Gear Solid 5, but like, I played a little bit of Snake Eater, but that was like
that franchise is for people who really like played it from the beginning.
Yeah, you know? I know that it's credited, like, Metal Gear Solid 1 is credited as like the first game to be like, this is all in-game footage, and like, you know, like people freaking out that you can see your footsteps and shit like that. Like, I respect it.
Yeah,
I wasn't there for it.
Very one of the most influential games of that decade. But,
yeah. Like, for this, like, the best looking game on PlayStation. Still, I think. Like, I'm trying to think of anything that can top it so far. Like, Jedi looks great, but like,
Red Dead.
With Red Dead, still like. Fuck yeah, no. Okay, maybe Red Dead is pretty as fuck.
Ghost of Tsushima looks like it's gonna be pretty.
Ghost of Tsushima is about to be a PS5 game. They're about to delay that.
Yeah, that's true.
I can feel it.
I went with just pure just playtime. My game of the decade is Skyrim, and as much as I could talk myself out of it, and in other ways, like Red Dead Redemption, the first, which is technically the second Red Dead game, but Red Dead Redemption on PS3 and 360 was sort of my default answer for so many years. And I didn't play that the year it came out. Like, I played that in like 2013, but still, it was my default answer for so long. That said, I think just Skyrim, it's not just the playtime, it's the fact that playtime is spread out throughout the entire decade. That I've put like 100 hours into that every year of this decade at least. Like, I'm always going back to it. I'm constantly, every couple months, going back to it and putting another 20 hours into it. It just, on PS3, on my Switch, like, I've just put so much time into it, and I've still never even beaten the main story. And I've still never even beaten the like main side quest of the whole like Stormcloak Rebellion. I've spent so much time in that game doing the same shit over and over again, and I just always want to go back to it. It hit me at the right time where now it's just my default open world fantasy experience. And for the first half of this decade, I probably would have said Oblivion is my favorite Elder Scrolls game too. I had so much time in that game as well. But at this point, Skyrim is just like my default video game, you know, like
it is a video game.
It is the game that sold the Switch for me. Like, honestly, more than Breath of the Wild, more just the fact that I knew I'd be able to play Skyrim anywhere sold the Switch to me. I've had my Skyrim skin on my Switch that came with Skyrim for it, and feels like a very fitting skin for me to have on there. Like, I've put so much time into it and really never gotten bored with it. Even when I got bored with it, I knew like, I'm going to come back to this. Like, I always put the most care into that game while I'm playing it, even though I've done a lot of the same shit over and over again. It just means so much to me, and it's taken so much of my time. It's hard for me to just say, like, I shouldn't have to, like, argue with myself to say that, you know? I should just be like, it's Skyrim, and now I've accepted it is Skyrim. Possibly my favorite game of all time, just in terms of, like, if you took it away from me, and I never had ever played it, the amount of time I would get back is just ridiculous. And speaking of games we put a lot of time into, I would also like to shout out Overwatch because I've put 200 hours into that over the last like 3 years.
That's my most played game of the decade easily.
And there's a lot of other games I put a lot of time into, a lot of open world games, but the one with the hardest drop off for me, which we said we were going to talk about at least briefly, is the entire Assassin's Creed franchise. Because I was like at the point where every year when one of those came out, it was my most anticipated game of every year, and I'd always play it and put like 40 to 60 hours into every playthrough. But then around when actually it was exactly at that transition from PS3 to PS4. I didn't get a PS4. I didn't play whatever the new release was, Unity, and I just fell off entirely. And I finally have played Unity. I occasionally play Assassin's Creed 3 on my Switch, but I just like it went from the series that was by far my favorite, most obsessed with the story, most obsessed with the world, most obsessed with like it was essentially how I just described Skyrim. It just fell off completely. And meanwhile, Skyrim has just stayed there the entire time, you know, and just been like, hey, I'm here whenever you need me, buddy, you know.
All reliable.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of biggest fall off, like it would have been Overwatch, but then we came back. And honestly, I'm trying to remember. I mean, okay, so with Overwatch, I feel like the reason we fell off was like, it just got so frustrating to play that goddamn game.
Yeah.
And like, it felt like, even if, like, I feel like within our, like, the three of us, like, you, me, and Johnny playing, if we would lose, and it was, like, if we just didn't play well, we would know, hey, that was because we played like ass that game. Like, you know, often we would just be, oh, you know what? My bad. Like, I'm playing like shit right now. I'm sorry. But then after a while, it became almost standard to load into a game and then either see, like, the 3 troll characters, because there were, like, several troll characters at the time.
Yeah.
And then if we would try to like communicate with our teammates, we would get, you know, fed toxicity. And it was just not.
Yeah.
But now that I think specifically roll queue, like I want to just point that out specifically, and then also Blizzard creating characters that are fun to play.
Yeah.
And they serve great utility, but they're also like engaging to play. So I feel like we've talked about Overwatch a lot. So like, that's both my like biggest drop off, because we lived and breathed Overwatch for not way too long, but
like 6 hours a day for like most days into the week. You know, just like
back
the default when the 3 of us all lived together and would just like whenever we were bored, just dive into our rooms, play a shit ton of rounds, and then come back. You know, I like there were moments where that was like Fortnite and some other stuff, but it was just consistently like, and like when I'm in my grind on Overwatch, it like no game is more fun for me.
Absolutely. Also, I want to give a small drop off shout out to Smash Ultimates Online. Yeah. Because I remember, like, I was really, really, really into it. Like, I was playing every day. Like, I was never like great, but it was just like, okay, I feel. Like, that was also when I decided, like, I want to completely main Captain Falcon, because I had felt like in the past he was kind of not great, but I don't really care, and, you know, whatever. Now I'm just like, fuck it, I'm full Falcon. Yeah. And I loved it, and then after a while I just gave up and just like, stopped caring, or I don't know. Yeah,
I thought about having Smash Ultimate as my drop-off game, but because honestly, like, and I said this earlier, like, if you just go off of my pure hours played, it's my most played Switch game, but it just doesn't feel like, it really feels like I've barely played Smash Ultimate compared to how much I played Smash 4 and how much I played Brawl, especially. Like, I put so many hours into Brawl. Like, that's up there for most played games for me, and Ultimate is, but it doesn't feel like it at all. Like, I haven't been as committed to Ultimate as I have previous Smash games, and I think that's on me. It's not on the game. But at the same time, I want to blame the game a little bit because it is such a collection of old stuff that there wasn't anything new that really excited me. Like, I played so much Smash Run, and it wasn't a great like new mode to carry a game, but I still put many hours into it. You know.
Cough, cough.
More coughing. So, yeah, I think that's all of our individual game awards. That said, best system of the decade, which I think for both of us is just literally like, which PlayStation are you choosing, or Nintendo handheld? Like, counting, I guess, the Switch as a handheld. It's like, it's like, can I because like I've probably put more hours into handheld games just off of you have them with you all the time
on the toilet.
But it's like, is it that home console PlayStation experience, or is it that Nintendo in the car experience? You know,
I mean, for me, it's the PS4. Like, I just had to. I like really was just like, man, you brought up the 3DS, and I was like, shit, the 3DS, like. If I'm thinking great. Like time put in, like I'm just being real, like probably it's gonna be 3DS.
The end of the DS's life was still really good too, you know.
Yeah.
The start of the Switch has been great.
But I'm just one, obviously recency bias I think plays a big role into this for me, and then also like I don't know, like I when I think of like what kind of gamer am I, like I feel like my preferences in games are more represented with PlayStation 4. Specifically PlayStation 4, because with PlayStation 3 like frankly the online I wasn't really using PSN as much. But now I feel like I use like PlayStation Plus every day, and like I'm on my PlayStation often, like it's my like multimedia thing. Like I don't use my Switch every week. I use my PlayStation pretty much every day.
Every day, yeah.
So like
same.
Yeah. Like
that said, I went with PS3. And I think that's just because if we're just going off of games, which is kind of how I want to think about this, because the PS4 is like functionally a better system than the PS3, but where do I have more hours put into? And we already talked about Skyrim, you know, like just my hours in PS3 Skyrim alone is still probably can rival any game I've played on the PS4, even Overwatch. And just think of all the games that came out in those last like 3 years of the PlayStation, 4 years of the PlayStation. You had Uncharted 3, Last of Us, GTA 5, the first Red Dead, Skyrim, and then like for me a lot of just personal favorites, Skate 3. Now I'm blanking.
At your
oh yeah, there you go. There was just a shit ton. Mortal Kombat 9, I think it was 2011. I mean,
because Lego games,
like the PS3 is arguably my favorite system of all time, and just those last couple years they were just on top, and that's when I put in a shit ton of hours. The Assassin's Creed games that came out in that like between like Brotherhood and 4, I played a shit ton.
So the PS4 was the first console that I like remember like saving up for, bought with my own money, and like it was a whole like I got that and Call of Duty Ghosts because it was like the only thing out.
Yep.
And
that or Killzone Shadowfall.
Or Killzone. And I was like, I don't know what the Killzone franchise is, and I probably made a mistake. I remember like making friends in school because like, oh shit, we all have like that was me going from the Xbox 360, getting red rings, going to the PS3 for like the very tail end of that generation. So honestly, maybe that's why I don't have that large of an affinity for the PlayStation 3 specifically.
Yeah.
Like I did play The Last of Us on there. I did play like Dishonored and I don't know. Like I like the Mass Effect trilogy. Like I did have a lot of great times with the PS3, but just like with the PS4, it was. And again, I put a lot of like the recency bias in this because I like having the memories of like I played Arkham City on PS3, but I remember freaking out for Arkham Knight and like going to buy it night of with my friend and buying the Batarang for no fucking reason.
Well, you have a Batarang now.
I mean, I have a Batarang now, so like that's awesome, but like I don't need it. I don't know. I think the very like little additions that they made that are completely unnecessary, like the touchpad, I love for no reason. It does. I
like when it's used.
Yeah, just, even when it's not. I just like that it's there. I like that it's big and it's just it says hi. This is the PlayStation.
It's the best map button on any system.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the light bar, even though it kills the battery.
The light bar's cool.
I like the thumbsticks. Like I love the like the physical.
The triggers are fantastic.
Yeah, like I love the hardware. I love the software. I love the little beep when you turn it on. I love the glow of the screen as you turn it on. Like it's just very.
PS4 is probably my favorite machine to play games on.
Yeah.
So on that criteria, it's probably the best.
The favorite machine to play games.
Yeah. So I guess in that way, it's probably fair to call it my favorite system, and I guess that can be our official show and like our collective answer, as I would give it to PS4. It's just comparing like. I feel like the Switch is swinging below its potential. I feel like the 3DS swing way above its potential at its peak. And the PS4 is just like solid, but that run of games at the end of the PS3's life is what gives it the edge for me.
So. I see. So going into best animated show of the decade.
We're going straight to animated?
Yeah. Like let's
sure.
I don't know.
I feel like there's an obvious answer for us here, and it's Steven Universe.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like, again, it's like a lot of this just happens to be like, where did I put my hours? And there was a summer where I watched so much Steven Universe, and it just like absorbed my life.
Same, but I chose Legend of Korra because I've seen all of Legend of Korra. Like, I fell off with Steven, and I feel like for that reason alone, I can't... Like, I feel weird giving it my... Because I
never watched Legend of Korra, so have your moment.
I'm not... I mean, I don't want to, like, go too long about it.
Yeah.
But, like, I think it's a worthy sequel series to Avatar The Last Airbender, which to me is, like, one of the greatest shows, animated or otherwise, of all time. I think, like, Legend of Korra Season 3 is better than anything from the original series. I know that that's controversial, but I believe it, and I stand by it.
Yeah,
and like that's pretty much it. Like I don't want to go too far into it. It's very good if you've seen it. If not, you haven't.
Like we were saying before, animation just like I think individually for us too. As we got older, in this decade we probably watched a lot less animation than we would have otherwise, like as kids. But it's just that whenever I did bother to tune into whatever was on animated wise, it was usually pretty damn good. And that's why like Steven Universe was a big deal for me because it was like my big comeback into like being committed to an animated show.
Shout out to Gumball. Gumball's really good.
Yeah.
I
really hated that like generation of Cartoon Network shows as they started coming on, like Chowder and then Adventure Time and stuff.
Oh, Chowder was great.
But as a kid, like I just didn't get it. And then as I got older and I like kind of went back to it, I realized like how good these shows actually were.
Yeah,
and
Flapjack is hilarious in hindsight. I didn't like Flapjack at first, but like in the same vein, going back, it's pretty fantastic. So going into best comedy or best drama, which one do you want to start off with?
Well, my favorite show of the decade, and this is just going off of what aired in this decade starting in 2010, is Community. I have a whole podcast about it. Even if you take out that first half of the first season of Community, which is arguably my favorite era of Community, you still get the majority of season 1, all of season 2, and on. And even though there are some lows there, that show's just too special to me that if any percent of it are in this decade, it's going to be in contention. But if we're just talking about shows that aired this decade, my favorite comedy, and maybe my favorite show, is Nathan For You.
Thank you. Okay.
That's another show that like I had seen a couple episodes, really enjoyed it, but then when I binged it, when I just sat down and watched it all in like a week, it's so much better than I ever thought it was. Like it just like it's smarter and dumber at the same time as any other show I've seen, and I love it for it. And like when I really thought about like a show I was just obsessed with, like I want to know everything about how it was made. Like it stands out on such a huge level. And like there are so many dramas that like I feel that way about, but to do that in a comedy of that format is just like I was just obsessed with every choice they made and why, and like how it all came together. And I just I just think it's one of the most well put together shows ever. And Nathan himself on that show, if you can call it a performance, 'cause so much of it is just him talking to people, like he's incredible. Like he should have won 10 times more awards than he did.
Oh yeah.
And I will watch whatever his next project is just by default.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I also want to give a shout out to Breaking Bad, which I didn't watch until it was over, but the second half of that was this decade, and the second half is fantastic. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is like my like unsung hero of the decade, because it started off really poor, got good. It's kind of fizzling out in the sense that Marvel TV is just going away and being rebranded as all the Disney Plus stuff, but it's managed to... It's like... I just feel like it's underrated because it's just striking above what it should be. While those CW shows I think are so ambitious and are just like... You give them an A+ for effort.
Yep,
like an absolute A+ for effort.
God bless them.
Like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is just doing, I think, as much or more, but with a lot less. You know? Like, they don't have a fucking Avengers on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's just a bunch of people in suits who are tangentially related to Marvel Phase 2 or whatever. Like, and yet, you know, it's taken on such a life of its own, and it feels like, you know, as fun as you could ever want, like, a TV network sci-fi show to be. You know, the budget is modest, the acting is modest but genuine. Like, there's such a clear love that the cast has for the show and for each other that it just shines through. And like, I think more people need to give it a chance. You know, if you can get past those first couple episodes, because it really, like, they do the very best with what they have, and I have so much respect for the people who make that show. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm upset that it never really grabbed me the way that I wanted it to.
I don't blame people. I feel like for everyone I know who stuck with it, absolutely adores that show.
So. Yeah. I mean, that's like, you and Shrimp are the two people that really like that really like fight for it, and that are like very vocal about how good it is still. Yeah. So like, I know that it's good. I just haven't really, you know.
Yeah.
So mine in the same vein of just like, it kind of was in the tail end of the decade, like Mad Men.
Oh,
holy fuck, Mad Men!
That was this decade.
Yeah, like the tail end of it. Like, I think it started in 2009.
Oh, okay.
The first episode was in 2009. So I'm just like, I count it. Like, it's technically not whatever, but I don't give a shit. Because beginning to end, and I still don't know exactly why in high school I gravitated toward some random ass show about the, you know, advertising in the 60s. But like, from the first episode, like, and I at this point I've probably watched it like 5 times, I think. No, not that many times. I'm sorry. I've started it 5 times.
Yeah.
Like, in the beginning, I would watch it, get maybe to season 3, and then be like, okay, I'll come back, and then completely forget and be like, you know what? I'll just start it over. And like, I feel it's not so much the like Professor Calamitous or whatever the fuck, where it's just like, I can't finish it. It's more just like, I'm so willing to restart it. Yeah. Because it's so, like, especially in the beginning, and then as it's like, it's rough because you know that there's so much show. And you, I kind of break it down as like, who is Don dating at this point? Because he goes through several, you know, spouses, and
it's a very sitcom-y way of thinking about it.
It really is. Honestly. Like, there are eras that are like, you can tell kind of, you know, based on what year it is, what everyone's wearing, like, toward the end of the series, certain characters, like, have physical transformation. Some people just, you know, who's working at the firm now and who's not, that kind of thing. All the characters feel real. All the acting is fantastic. It has one of the best endings, like most satisfying endings, I think. It's just very, very, very good. I can't really, it's hard. It's like a hard sell, because like, if you're not into it, then I can't really, you know, I can't tell you why it gets interesting. I can just tell you that it does.
It's funny because I feel like I have the least to say about TV out of the 3 major topics we have here. Yet I would say TV was the best out of the 3 this decade. Like, this is probably the best decade for television ever. Yeah. Right? Like, like almost unequivocally, just the amount of like content that's coming out that's good. Like, so much of it is good. Like, there's so many shows that I haven't seen that I know are like considered some of the best shows of all time. And
I mean, in terms of like, yes, but how do you think, like, most influential? Like, how did it
most
change?
Influential? Yeah. I mean, like, I
feel like there's one, maybe, like, I don't know. In my head, like, I don't like my pick, but I'm also like, I want to know if I'm wrong, because
I think the two most, I think the most influential single show is Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Because it became, well, not only is it sort of the Fortnite thing of being just the most popular, touching the most people, like having the highest viewership, but it's like, first of all, HBO is like a transitional point, I think, for streaming, because it's at the same time like something that has existed pre-streaming, but has also very successfully made the streaming transition. Like, I almost thought of saying like House of Cards or like Orange is the New Black, because it just created like the streaming era, essentially, just on the backs of those shows.
That point, plus the cultural relevance of Game of Thrones, makes me think Stranger Things.
Really?
Yeah, because at first I was like House of Cards, but then I was like, well, you know, like, it didn't bring people into Netflix. Like, if you're already using Netflix, then you were just going to watch, you know, you're going to watch House of Cards. Like, it's not going to...
It just justified Netflix to all the people who owned it.
Yeah, already. Like, it's not a platform seller. Yeah. Like, it didn't make you sign up for Netflix. But I feel like Stranger Things, especially after that first season, it became like, okay, summer is Stranger Things time, and like everyone is watching this, and it's memes now, it's commercials, it's we're gonna watch this group of fucking kids grow up now, and now these kids are in everything. Like it's.
I feel like critically though, and like artistically, Game of Thrones had a little more impact. Like not just in terms of how many awards it made, but like everyone wants their Game of Thrones. I feel like more than everyone wants their Stranger Things. Like I feel like Mandalorian is their attempt at like this is like our like high concept fantasy thing that will like capture people week by week like Game of Thrones did. Whereas like Stranger Things I think is just the pinnacle of the Netflix model.
I think Stranger Things pushed like also the resurgence of like 80s
True.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, you got to give that a lot of credit.
They're a lot more like I feel like kids actors are getting a better chance now because of Stranger Things.
There's a lot more authentically casted kids.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot more like open homages to like, hey, you know what? This might not be original, but it's good, so fuck you. Yeah. Like I think
you almost like it goes back to the Force Awakens discussion in the sense of just like things can just be unabashedly nostalgic now without any other pretense, and you can sell something on just that. And Stranger Things sort of cemented that in a big way. When was the first season? 2015, 2016?
2015, I think.
Yeah, that was a big year for nostalgia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that'll do it. 2015.
I give the edge to Game of Thrones because it did what it did for longer, more consistently, whereas I feel like the Stranger Things 2 and 3 had a bit of a drop-off. But Game of Thrones ended so poorly, it just petered out so much that had it had the stronger ending, I would think it would be inarguable. But because it petered out, it dropped off even harder than Stranger Things did. It's hard to say.
Do you think The Walking Dead is in any...
I was thinking about that. I think it's almost a fair argument to give Game of Thrones credit to The Walking Dead because in a way it did it first. It's still doing it because apparently the most recent seasons have been really good. I don't care. I fell off very hard on that show, but like apparently the most recent seasons are like the best it's ever been, which is just crazy for me. But like I mean that was real event TV at the same time, and it was also the pinnacle of that zombie moment that we were in for the first half of the decade. But yeah.
So we're going into shout-outs?
Just general shout-outs. We'll wrap this episode and this decade with that.
Yeah, general shout-outs to the PS4 lineup. I'm just thinking about, like, in terms of the console wars, which I'm interested to see how they progress in the future. Like, especially now that we know that, like, okay, definitively at launch, Xbox is going to be more powerful than PlayStation. Is that going to matter?
Yeah.
And, like, I don't think it will. Like, I really, like, that's fantastic that you can run a game at 120 frames per second. Is it Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, that's the thing. Sony managed to have so many console sellers. Like, the fact that Spider-Man is, like, as good as it is basically a PlayStation mascot, and yet is still not their number one guy. Like, you have, like, A+ Spider-Man game, and that sold a shit ton of consoles to people, and yet in that same year there was God of War. Like, in that same launch period there was God of War. Like, within the same season there was God of War. It's just ridiculous. And that was just 2018.
Yeah. And, like, I'm just thinking of not just the exclusives, but just, like, the play it first on PlayStation, like, just like, PlayStation is the best place to play. Like, PlayStation 4 specifically.
It's like the default, you know? It just feels like the default console. Like, I don't know. Like, obviously I'm biased in that it is the one I own, but I own it because I've always played PlayStation, so it's not like this one in particular won me over.
Yeah, swayed you.
But I feel like when you see people... Like, it's almost like... When you go back and watch old, like, television shows and stuff... from like the 360 era, if they were like playing video games, they would be holding 360 controllers. But now if you watch a TV show, like, I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, even Endgame when they're playing Fortnite, like, I'm pretty sure that's on a PS4. Yeah, exactly. And it's that kind of like cultural impact that I think is almost like people don't even like. There's probably so many people who don't think about the fact that they have specifically a PlayStation in their home. It is just like, I want to play 2K, so I bought... This is the box. The GameStop told me to buy a PS4, you know? Like, yeah.
Like, this is what I do to play my things now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not necessary. Like,
and just
Sony brand allegiance.
As much as they have great first party games, their multi-platforms they have it all, and it all is consistent on there, and it there's no reason to get an Xbox over a PS4 for multi-platforms when, if you get a PS4, you also get all the other single player things, even if you're just going to play 2K, I feel like at this point, maybe at launch there was a lot of 360 loyalists who got Xbox Ones, but at this point you're just going to get PlayStation.
Yeah. And again, this also kind of transitions into another one of my shout outs, the fact that the fighting game community is a PlayStation, it's PlayStation.
Yeah.
If you show up to a tournament and your shit can't plug into a PlayStation, you're fucked.
Yeah, and you don't need a fight stick. It's very well accepted that you can just use a PlayStation controller.
So one of my other shout-outs is shout-out to fighting game accessibility.
Yeah.
Because for me, and I'm not saying that fighting games are now accessible to everyone, because they're very much not. But I think that it's way easier to get in on a more competitive level. On a casual competitive level.
Yeah.
Knowing... Because, in the past, I would get a Street Fighter, and I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm going to learn, a few very basic combos with this character. And then I would see a game like Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom, and just be like, I thought I was holding block, and I'm dead now, and I don't know what's going on, stuff like that.
I think a big part of that is the, gatekeeping, I think, for fighting games has gone down a bunch. And, I think I would say there are 3 games you can credit for that. And that's Smash Bros. Being accepted into the fighting game community, full stop. Melee, obviously, but Smash 4 had thriving competitive, and now Ultimate has a very thriving competitive scene. And that's the most successful fighting game there is. Then you've also got Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is an easy game to pick up and feel good, feel like you're actually playing well. And stuff exactly. Feel like you're playing a traditional arcade fighting game right off the bat, right after picking up a controller. And it's not only popular with fans, but it's popular with the fighting game community. They didn't no one was really shunning it because it was too accessible. And then Injustice being this DC crossover game that has a bunch of people playing it purely because they're DC fans.
I was going to say Injustice,
and then giving you the frame data to make it clear that this is a competitive game. Whereas the other 2 games
what
I said,
those words mean, while also making the words so easy to read and easy to implement into what you're doing next.
Yeah, Smash Bros brought the casual scene to the competitive scene, whereas Injustice and Dragon Ball brought the competitive scene to the casual scene. And they've met in the middle, and now fighting games are just everyone's playing.
Yeah, I did not think the fact that I went from not knowing what frame data was to knowing how to read frame data and understand it on a very basic level. I'm not an expert, but on a very basic level.
Yeah,
I love that.
So one of my shout-outs, and I'm going to combine these 2, is in the vein of Smash Bros. It's the fact that we got 3 Smash Bros. Games this decade and 2 full Smash hype cycles, which are just always generation-defining, console generation-defining periods of time when everyone's speculating about Smash. And I thought the Smash Dojo would be hard to beat. Brawl had a huge hype train, but the Smash 4 hype train was massive, and then Ultimate just did the same thing, but had it all take place in 6 months.
Yeah, because
9 months from release to reveal to release, and there was so much hype in that time.
And they pulled it off so well. Yeah, that trailer. Excuse me if you like Splatoon, but the Splatoon bullshit for 20 minutes,
and then it ended in Smash Bros.
It ended. And then it started up with more Splatoon stuff at first, and you're like, why? And then the big, jaw-dropping reveal and the immediate we've talked about seeing Link as Breath of the Wild Link instead of old Link, making you immediately know that this is not a port, this is a new game. It was one of the most hype moments of this decade.
And the Smash Direct where they showed that everyone was in the game, and they just, boom, reveal 60 characters, and they're in the game, and it's just that mind-boggling thing when you see the mural. Yeah. There was so much just packed into those months when we were getting that game. And that transitions me into my next shout-out, which is Nintendo Directs. And specifically, the memories I have of Reggie and Iwata from this decade. Nintendo's not the same without them. I still love Nintendo, but how personal, this is why Nintendo will always be in contention for me. I love Sony, and I know some of the people on top at Sony, but I just don't have that it really felt like Iwata and Reggie were like our friends,
Yeah.
you know, during that time. That
Yeah.
one Smash Bros. Reveal where they revealed the Miis, and it was Reggie fighting Iwata at E3. Like, that was awesome.
That was hype.
Yeah. And the fact that they realized the bullshit E3 presentation is bullshit and you don't need to do it.
Yeah.
They were just like, we're going to do our own live stream. It's going to be perfect for Nintendo. Just the way they release information in a direct just feels ideal for Nintendo.
Oh, and one more
and the
thing.
fact that and one more thing, the fact that they started doing things like this game will be out after this live stream is over. Like shit like that. Like, it's Nintendo Directs are the most hyped thing, and they now it's at the point where it's just like they just announced there's going to be one in like 3 days for Pokemon, and we know we're going to get something.
Yeah.
Like, even though there's plenty that are disappointing, you always get something. And it's just, like, Nintendo really, I think, nailed it with that. Like, it just created even more brand loyalty than I already had, you know? Like, they had me because I grew up on them, but yeah. So moving off of games, real quick, just some of the best theater moments I ever had were this decade. I already talked about how this decade was just important for me when it came to film, but, like, all... like 3, I would say, Avengers Assemble moments. This is the big one in Endgame, obviously, which is probably my number one favorite, maybe movie moment ever, honestly. Probably. But like the first like shot of all of them in the original Avengers, just I'll always remember being in the theater seeing that. In Age of Ultron, when they're all battling around the like thing in the church, and then like the 3 Vision, Iron Man, and Thor all like shooting their beams at Ultron, like those moments. And then Infinity War was kind of like the outlier in that sense, but the fact that we just got 4 Avengers movies in the span of 7 years is just, again, like, if I could show that to myself in 2010, I would actually shoot myself and be like, who's this crazy person showing me lies? Like,
the
that
future
could never
is full
happen.
of lies.
But also 2 other major theatrical moments for me that I'll never forget is Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the like movie that shocked me and eventually spawned my favorite movie trilogy of all time, had the incredible moment when Caesar speaks for the first time. That like I went into that movie really not expecting much at all. I just saw it with a friend on a whim over the summer. Like, knew my dad liked the Planet of the Apes series. That was the extent of it, is that it was some old sci-fi thing I knew my dad loved. And that moment where Caesar shouts no for the first time and the entire theater stunned silence.
Yeah, just the vacuum.
And then the eruption once he hits fucking Draco Malfoy and everything goes nuts on screen. The entire theater, like, there was a very loud, oh shit! But it didn't come until after that moment of silence was over. Like, when a movie is able to take such deliberate control of the audience and it works, is just, like, that's why you go to the movie theaters and see movies with people.
That is also one of my favorite just movie moments, because when there was the, like... But there's also one dude, like, while everyone else was in that moment of like, wow, there's just some dude who's so immediately down, he's just like, there it is, and just starts clapping.
And they build to it so well.
Oh, it was so good.
And also, a big one for me, because I've been a Godzilla fan my whole life, and the first time I ever got to see a Godzilla movie in theaters was the 2014 Aaron Taylor Johnson Ford Brody movie that also starred Godzilla. But those moments with Godzilla, specifically when his tail starts to light up and the atomic breath comes out for the first time, I was 17, 16, whatever, seeing it for the first time. And my brother, who was like 20 already, the 2 of us, just way too grown to be doing this, were actually jumping out of our seats. Like, it was uncontrollable, my excitement. Like, that was my biggest, like, fist pump moment of the decade. Like Endgame, I was
come out
weeping.
Of the water was like close for me.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like a huge. I mean, also playing Ultimate Alliance. Like, I played Ultimate Alliance 2 with my brother so fucking much. Yeah. And like seeing because the helicarrier is like the main hub of that game. So I'm just like, there's no way they're gonna fucking put the helicarrier in a movie. Like, 1, because it's fucking nerdy, and 2, like, just CG.
Then Winter Soldier had 4 of them.
Just casually. Because why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, going back and showing myself, like, Endgame. And just, like, you know, I don't know. I Giant Ant-Man, or Giant Man, whatever. Like, I feel like that is one of my favorite movie moments of the... Because I after going into Ant-Man 1, I was hoping that they would, like, tease it at the end. And I was like, okay. Like, I know they're going to do it.
They make it so clear that it's possible.
Yeah.
But
they just are just like... the way they revealed it was perfect.
I mean, Civil War, that shot of them all running at each other is like, that's also super memorable. I mean, I would say there were really 5 Avengers movies this decade because those moments in Civil War feel as good as any Avengers movie.
No, that was an Avengers movie.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one last big shout out, but I want to save it for last and we can close out the show from there. So if you have anything you want to touch on.
I just want to give a shout out to the rise of like Reddit and memes. My personal discovery of Reddit, at least, because I think I think the beauty of the internet today, like the good side of the internet at least, is that you can find something that immediately becomes your favorite thing.
Yeah.
And then you can then find other people who that's now their favorite thing too. And like I think and like also shout out Kinda Funny in this, because it's like having a very, 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 very niche sense of humor is something that I value.
Yeah.
And being able to share that with other people is something that I find extremely valuable. And the fact that like when I was trying to play Monster Hunter, like Reddit was necessary because that's how I found other hunters to play with. And if I was playing through Sekiro and I needed some help with this boss, I would go to Reddit because they would actually answer my questions and stuff like that. I think like I don't put myself out there on the internet that much as I speak into my podcast, but like but like when I do, like I genuinely am reminded that like, people can be cool sometimes.
Yeah.
So like shout out to the cool people on the internet.
I shout out to all the friends I made when I was in high school that were like just part of an online Smash Bros community, and then like being able to just have that community outside of the real world, which didn't always provide that and can't always provide that. That's a big thing. Okay. So the final thing I want to point out is that we turned 18 in 2015. That's literally halfway through this decade. So I think this decade, my final takeaway, shout out for the decade, is just the fact that I think this will be the most important decade of pop culture for me for the rest of my life. It was the end of my childhood and the start of my adulthood. Just like my most formative years of like consuming pop culture were this decade. And just the change in not only what was being released, but how I was consuming art and media from 2010 to 2020 is just massive, and I think will stick with me forever. It's cemented.
It's like the first time you choose what you like.
Exactly.
Having stuff
like the stuff that I still am into from childhood, like from, being like 6 years old. There's a lot of that stuff I'm not into anymore, but the stuff I am now is because it was cemented over this last decade. Like Marvel and superheroes, like the fact that we had such an amazing decade for superhero movies cemented the fact that I won't fall off of that. The fact that we had this resurgence of Star Wars, whether or not I love all of it, just cemented the fact that I will always be into that franchise. And like, the rise of games like Overwatch that I never would have known I would have wanted, that now I'm obsessed with. Like this just... I will always have the memories I have from this decade probably at the top of my mind. Whereas, there's certain things from childhood that just kind of fell off. And, there's probably going to be certain things I'm going to get into later in my 20s and 30s that will be great at the time, but maybe won't stick with me as long. I just think this decade is what made me who I am. It's what made me want to do something like this and talk about things that I love. It's what cemented for me that like pop culture, video games, movies are just the most important thing to me in terms of bringing me the most happiness, motivating me the most. Like I care so much about art, and if it hadn't been for the games that came out this decade or the movies that came out this decade, I don't know. If had it been a weaker decade, like I don't know. It was just everything it needed to be at for better or for worse,
Like I remember saying out loud often, like, now is a great time to be a nerd.
Yeah.
Like right now, not just because like we didn't have these things before. No, because we got to experience them at that. Like, I'm very glad that I was a child when the first Iron Man came out, so that I could be, 22 when fucking Endgame came out. Like that's whatever. Like after Endgame came out, I would explain to people, I fucking cried for 2 hours and 45 minutes, and they're like, oh, haha, and I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. It was literally half of my life coming to a perfect end. Like that is.
But and the fact is that you don't have to be a nerd to have had that experience
Mm-hmm.
either. Like there are so many people who weeped at Endgame who don't really care that much about superheroes or even superhero movies or Marvel movies, but Endgame just still, I think, for the entire movie-going populace, just felt like such a moment, you know? And it was like, we were spoiled from 2010, like, in terms of nerd and pop culture.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Just even comparing 2010 to 2005, like, it was still a big increase. But where we are now is just is unfathomable.
Yeah.
To, like, where we were back then. It's utterly ridiculous. Like, we're looking at, you know, Black Panther was nominated for Best Picture last year. Joker has a very good shot of it this year. Like, it seems like we could be at the point now where every year a superhero movie is nominated for Best Picture. Yeah. At least until the bubble finally bursts, if that ever happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't have much more to say on that.
No, that is a very good point. I didn't consider that.
I just, like, yeah.
Time is moving forward, and old is what we're getting.
And over is what this podcast is.
Bye!
Thank you for listening Loosely Defined. We're all over the internet.
Yep.
Thanks for coming back with us after this little break.
It'll be 2020.
Smooth sailing through 2020. Hopefully we'll be, you know,
healthy,
creating some exciting things in a very healthy and productive manner.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for following us. We love you.
Social media links in the description. Timecodes as well.
Stay loose in 2020.
Stay loose.